morning's session. The final speaker is Adonice Baaklini. He completed his PhD on the archaeology of the ancient Near East, again at Sorbonne University in 2019. He again specializes in the Neo-Assyrian Empire, but with a very strong focus on the Western expansion of the Assyrian Empire. So his talk is entitled "The Mesopotamian Empires and Their Relation to Phoenicia: An Overview from Sargon of Akkad to Nebuchadnezzar." Please.
I wanted to thanks a lot the organizer, FIMA Institute, and of course Acadian University. Today I will present an important matter both in the Near Eastern study and the studies of empire, which is the relations of the Mesopotamian Empire with their periphery. Those empires, from the 3rd millennium BC until the fall of Babylon in the middle of the 6th century BC, always wanted to control all the Near East. In their quest, they encountered many lands and many peoples. If some lands had an important place in the strategic vision of the Mesopotamians because of one specific characteristics, like an exceptional landscape, a geostrategic location, or the presence of valuable resources, some other lands were at the first range of the empire goals because they had all those characteristics, and that was the case of Phoenicia, which always had a very specific and more important place than the other lands in the Mesopotamian sources. So today my problematic will be to give an overview of the place that had Phoenicia in each of the main Mesopotamian imperial or imperial-like formations. And we will see what are the common characteristics among the empires concerning their relation to Phoenicia, and if any, what are the characteristics that are specific to one or more of the empire. To help us, we have three kind of sources: the text, which are the Mesopotamian royal inscription and the Mesopotamian archive, the iconography, all the Mesopotamian representation of conquest in Phoenicia, or Mesopotamian reliefs carved directly in the Phoenician territory. And we will also use the archaeological data. The archaeological data are corresponding to all the artifacts that we can link to Mesopotamia found in the Phoenician territory. Before, I will just make a little point to define Phoenicia and Phoenician, what will be Phoenicia and Phoenician in that presentation, because it's a matter of many debates. So with while the Phoenician, so the Phoenician territory, as commonly understood by scholars, will be the part of the shore between Akko in the south and Latakia in the north. But it is worth noting that Phoenicia and the Phoenician are Greek names, and that they have not been used during the time of the Mesopotamian hegemony. But we can use those terms because Phoenicia always had a kind of particular cultural identity and political formation based on city-states, even if that particularity is less true during the 3rd and the 2nd millennium. Anyway, if it's not always justified to use the term Phoenician before 1200 BC, we can speak here of the Phoenician territory maybe during that period. Indeed, the prototype of the Phoenician cities were in the areas, and Mesopotamian always described northern Levant and its coastal region in a particular manner in comparison to the other areas. I divide my presentation in three main parts. In the first part, I will deal with the first contact between Mesopotamia and Phoenicia. After, I will discuss what happened during the Medio and the Neo-Assyrian period. And eventually, we will see the relation between Phoenicia and the last empire based in Mesopotamia, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The first clue of the contact between Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean shore, and maybe Phoenicia, come from the Acadian Empire. The Acadian Empire is considered to be one of the first empires of the world. He controlled most of the Syro-Mesopotamian area. His founder, Sargon the Great, or Sargon of Akkad, is proud to introduce himself as the king who reached the Mediterranean and the Silver Mountains, as we can see in the following two inscriptions. The first inscription, so, to Sargon, lord of the land, the god Enlil gave no rival. The god Enlil gave to him the upper sea, so the upper sea, the Mediterranean, and the lower sea, the Persian Gulf, so that from the lower sea to the upper sea, citizens of Akkad held the governorship of the land. The second inscription, Sargon, king of the world, was victorious in 34 battles. He destroyed their city walls as far as the shore of the sea. He moored the ships of Melucha, Magan, and Dilmun at the quay of Akkad. Sargon the king bowed down the god Dagan in Tutul. He gave to him the upper land, Mari, Yarmuti, and Ebla, as far as the cedar forest and the silver mountains. So here we have a clear delimitation of the symbolical border of the empire of Sargon from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. And in the second inscription, we have here the mention of the silver mountains. So silver mountains, if we consider that silver here is a reference to the snow, it could be Mount Lebanon. But there is also another possibility. It could be, silver could be a reference to the mining activities in southern Anatolia, and it could be just the fact that he reached mountain where we have mine of silver. But anyway, Sargon the Great come very close to the Phoenician territory. And that it's important to note that that conquest was probably very ephemeral. Indeed, no cities of the shore are quoted, and the last cities in the west, it's Ebla. After the Empire of Akkad, we have two main political formations at the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, the Kingdom of Upper Mesopotamia and the Kingdom of Mari. Those two kingdoms are not real empire, but they had a huge political influence in the Near East, and they give some symbolical image to Phoenicia that they will be used by the following political formation in Mesopotamia. So it's important to quote them here. The Kingdom of Upper Mesopotamia is considered as the prototype of the Assyrian kingdom, and Shamshi-Adad, the first Assyrian king, we can say, also is like Sargon the Great, is very proud to present himself as the one who reached the Mediterranean, as we can read. So at that time, I received the tribute of the kings of Turkish and of the king of the upper land within my city Ashur. I set up my great name and my monumental inscription in the land of Lebanon on the shore of the Great Sea. And another inscription, he say, I roofed the temple with cedar beams. I erected in the room cedar doors with silver and gold stars. Here, it is the first time that Mount Lebanon is clearly quoted. We have two elements that will be recurrent after. The setting of a relief in Mount Lebanon and the use of cedar beams for the construction of official buildings. Concerning the kingdom of Mari, which was currently the zone between the border between Syria and Iraq. In the archives of the Kingdom of Mary, we have some clues of contact with the shore, as we can see with a letter quoting messenger from Byblos. And there is also another letter which deals with the gift made by a Syrian vassal of Mary, and that gift is a textile and garment from Byblos. So it is the first time that handcraft from Phoenician territory is quoted in a Mesopotamian source. After the fall of the Kingdom of Mary, we have to wait until the formation of the Medo-Assyrian Empire to hear from Phoenicia again. Indeed, a little bit before the end of the Medo-Assyrian Empire, a dynamic king, Tiglath-Pileser I, reached the Mediterranean and gives a long description of his conquest. As we can read, I marched to Mount Lebanon. I cut down and carried off cedar's beams for the temple of the gods, Anu and Adad, the great god, my lords. I continued to the land Amuru and conquered the hinterland Amuru. I received tribute from the lands Byblos, Sidon, and Arwad. I rode in boats of the people of Arwad and traveled successfully a distance of 3 double hours from the city Arwad, an island, to the city Samuru, which is in the land Amuru. I killed at sea an Akhiru, which is called a seahorse. Again, the natural elements are a main subject of the description: the mountain, the trees, the sea. And we can notice that the descriptions are more precise, with the name of several cities. The episode of the maritime journey is very important. It describes the king as the man who is able to access and control the Phoenician maritime connection. He is also described as the master of the element when he says that he killed a seahorse. It is important to say that conquest was sporadic, and no imperial institution at that time were installed in Phoenicia. Indeed, it was just a campaign to get a maximum of tributes. From the period of the Medo-Assyrian Empire, we found an Assyrian seal from the test trench at Tyre. If the object is very similar to what we can see in Assyria, and it is probably an importation, it is difficult to link its presence with any political events. It is more likely the result of regional exchange than the clue of any Assyrian imperial presence at that time. At the end of the second millennium BC, with all the political difficulties, the Medo-Assyrian Empire collapsed, and we have to wait the creation of the Neo-Assyrian Empire to see new links between Mesopotamia and Phoenicia. So the Neo-Assyrian Empire was the most powerful entity of the Near East during 200 years. And it is considered as the biggest empire of Mesopotamia. Because of the numerous references to Phoenicia in the texts, but also in the art of Assyria, we cannot present all our sources in that part, but I will select the more representative ones. For example, Salman the Third was one of the most dynamic Assyrian kings in the 9th century. He left many inscriptions about Phoenicia, like the following one, which describe his conquest of Phoenicia after he fought in southern Syria in Mount Hurano, currently Jabal Huran. So we can read, I marched to Mount Hurano and razed, destroyed, burned, and plundered cities without number. I marched to Mount Bali Ra'si, which is a cap jutting out into the sea before the land of Tyre, and erected my royal statue there. I received tribute from Bali Manzeri of Tyre and from Yehu of the house of Khumri. On my return, I ascended Mount Lebanon and erected my royal statue with the statue of Tiglath-Pileser, a strong king who preceded me. That inscription is very representative of the description we can find of Phoenicia in Assyrian text. The erection of relief and stele in Mount Lebanon, and the perception of huge tribute from the Phoenician cities. It is also worth noting that the king emulated his predecessor by putting a relief near the one of Tiglath-Pileser. From the time of that king, we have some bronze band like this one, showing Phoenician tribute bearers. Tribute coming from Phoenicia were numerous and composed of many high valuable crafted items, and we have many representation of Phoenician giving tribute to Assyrian. Quickly, on the Mesopotamian tradition of erecting stele in relief in the Near East, and in particular in some special places, we can see the example of Nahr al-Galp. It is probably its mountainous shape and its proximity to the sea, which made it such a symbolical place, and it's the place when we have the more Assyrian relief at the same place. During the 8th century, the strategy toward Phoenicia changed, and the Assyrians started to integrate some part of the Phoenician territory into the Assyrian imperial system. It is the case in 738 with the creation of the province of Cimera in the northern part of Phoenicia after a failed coalition between Arameans and Phoenicians against Assyria. It is the first Assyrian province in Phoenicia. We do not know many things about it, but we have letters sent by the governor of the province to the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III, where he deals with the creation of a fort in Kashpuna. Kashpuna may be currently Kusba, and probably the fort at Kusba was meant for defending the southern part of the province of Cimera. We know also from the archive that the Assyrian governor of Cimera had also the ability to take taxes from the wood commercial activities of Tyre and Sidon. During the reign of Sargon II, the empire had a significant extension, and the Assyrian even reached Dilmun, which is probably currently Bahrain in the Gulf, and Cyprus in the Mediterranean. That is a huge step in the mental world of the Mesopotamian. Phoenicia, without losing its special place, is not anymore considered as the maximum western extent of the empire. But it is worth noting that the hegemony of Assyria in Cyprus was very light, and probably it did not last very long. To finish with the Neo-Assyrian period, we can quote the events in the 7th century. During the 7th century, almost all the Phoenician territory will be incorporated to the Assyrian provincial system. First, Sidon, which was conquered by Asharadon, and a new city was created named Kar Asharadon, which was a commercial hub, and also, maybe according to some new researchers, a military maritime base for Assyria. After, we have the annexion of the mainland of Tyre. And during the reign of Ashurbanipal, all the revolts were pacified, and the Phoenician maritime forces were incorporated to the Assyrian army, and they went with the Assyrian army against Iran and Egypt. What is very new during the Neo-Assyrian period is the fact that the Neo-Assyrian Empire had a kind of cultural impact in Phoenicia. It is essentially an impact that touched the elite culture with the introduction of some artifacts like ceramic and glyptic that were probably important in the process of elite conspicuous consumption. Besides glyptic and ceramic, we have some clue of the Assyrian cultural impact on sculpture and architecture in Phoenicia. Because that issue is a huge one and need a dedicated study, we will only here take the example of the tableware, which is very significant. All the ceramic are Assyrian-like pots coming from the Phoenician territory. They represent the most fine ware that Assyrians used during banquets. We can notice the first specimen, number 1 to 5, which are carinated bowls. Those bowls have a strong symbolical meaning, while they were directly linked to the image of the Assyrian king. All those finds are most probably locally made, but they represent that elite identity of the Near East during the 8th and the 7th century, linking to Assyrian commensality and way of life. But it is worth noting that the cultural impact of Assyria was very limited and that no huge change occurred. At the end of the 7th century, the Assyrian Empire collapsed and the Babylonian took the vacant place. The Neo-Babylonian left very few direct written sources to understand its history and its link to Phoenicia. We have from the Bible the description of a 13 years unsuccessful siege of Tyre, but that is not confirmed by any other sources. We will here focus on another matter which is interesting in the Neo-Babylonian Empire. It's the phenomenon of the rock relief of the that the Neo-Babylonian left in Phoenicia. Indeed, there are all relief of Nebuchadnezzar, and they were carved in specific places, isolated from the precedent Assyrian relief, as if the Babylonian wanted to write their own history with Phoenicia. We have in Lebanon one Assyrian relief at Nahr al-Kalb, one at Aqrum al-Atiqa, two near Khartoum in Wadi al-Saba, and two in Wadi Burisa. We can see, for example, some of them. Here you have the two relief from Wadi al-Saba, one showing the king killing the lion, a very standard image of the kingship in Mesopotamia, and the other showing the king in front of divine symbol. We can see also the example from Nahr al-Kalb, which is very interesting. It is an inscription carved in the northern part of the rock, isolated from the other side, where all the precedent Assyrian and Egyptian relief were made. So those reliefs are the only real clue of the Babylonian presence in Phoenicia, and it shows how Babylonians, who were not linked to Phoenicia before, on contrary to the Assyrian, wanted to mark the territory by their presence, like if they wanted to be the discoverers of Phoenicia. After that quick overview of 3 millennia of relation between Mesopotamia and Phoenicia, we can make some conclusive remarks. Which is obvious is that Phoenicia, or the Phoenician territory, was synonym of far away and unknown lands, giving fame to any kings who reached it. It is worth noting that we have to wait until the conquest of Cyprus, which expand the known lands to the west, to see that reaching Mediterranean is not as famous as before in the sources. That is linked with the vision of the world the Mesopotamian had in their tradition. Indeed, for them the world was surrounded by water, so Phoenicia was the end of their world. Even if Mesopotamian probably known that there is something after the water in the west, for example, we have clue of exceptional relation with Crete in the text of Mari, that traditional vision had a huge impact on the minds of the kings reaching Mediterranean. Also, Mount Lebanon is also an important symbol. All the kings were proud to cut cedar from it to construct their palaces and temples with the cedars of Mount Lebanon. This mountain had an important mythical value. Indeed, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh did an expedition to this mountain with his friend Enkidu to cut cedars, but they had to fight the dangerous monster Humbaba before. Phoenicia appears also to have a huge commercial interest. It is clear from Mesopotamian sources quoting cutting of cedar and royal Assyrian inscription quoting endless list of luxury Phoenician tributes. But besides those collected resources, Assyrian also managed to have commercial hub in Phoenicia, to have more regular income, and to have a more in-deep control, or at least overseas, of Phoenician economy. The geostrategic concern about Phoenicia is clearly restricted to the Neo-Assyrian and probably the Neo-Babylonian Empire. In their fight against Egypt, Phoenicia became a very important territory. Controlling it meant stopping the Egyptian influence in the Levant. Only under Assyrian and Babylonians, real provinces were created in Phoenicia, which led to the annexion of almost all the territory. Probably the geopolitical concern and achievement explain in part the influence had Mesopotamia during the first millennium on Phoenicia, and especially on its elite culture. But the diffusion of the Assyrian culture is also a general phenomenon in the Near East, not always linked to Assyrian conquest. Indeed, we can notice a creation of a kind of cultural koine based on an Assyrian traditions and way of life, which spread not even inside the empire, but also at its peripheral areas. Sorry. And so to conclude, it is important that all the results presented here need more in-depth analysis, and especially the new result from Lebanese excavation in Batroun or from survey like the NOLEB project in northern Lebanon will help us in the future to understand more what was the place of Phoenicia in the Mesopotamian mines. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very wide overview. Are there questions or comments?
Yes, it's a side question, but to which extent we can be confident in associating the Mount of Bali Rashili with the Nahr al-Galp promontory? Yeah, but I mean, when they used to describe territories, they used to, you know, compact distances. So
yeah, that's true. For example,
because why he has to mention it if it was not very important for him, and we have his reliefs on Nahr al-Galp. So can we go to this extent in the association of both the geographic and the toponym?
Maybe it's one of the possibility that was proposed. You're right about the thing that they compacted everything. For example, when they describe Kashmuna, for example, they said that they said that Kashmuna is on the seashore because for them it's close to the sea. Yeah, maybe Varanasi could be narrow. It is possible.
Yes.
You know the map, the Babylonian map on the weekend, Babylon as the center of the world, and different territories are called Nag in Acadian, which means island or over the sea. And in Nebuchadnezzar II's inscription, published to his kid, he said that he received tribute from Tyre and his Nag. And actually, we're thinking about Kafka. What do you think about that? And Greek debate actually in astrology. If Nebuchadnezzar II received a tribute from Kafka, yes or no? What do you think about that? Because your last map showed the Phoenician integration to the west, eastern coordinate, but in fact, I think as Phoenicia has a central place with the Acadians, the Greeks, and that. What do you think about that? Do you think that?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because we have to know more about the relative. Probably Babylon didn't reach Carthage because you have Egypt between them. Yeah, that's the thing. The thing is, the links between Tyre and Carthage are those links so close that if Tyre give tribute to Nebuchadnezzar, Carthage will do so. That's the question. Because Carthage, I don't know, at the 6th century BC, I think we don't know many things about Carthage. That time in the archaeological
sources, but probably it was Tani, yeah. I know that inscription. Yeah, no, it's a difficult question because I think even in the 6th century BC, Carthage was a powerful kingdom, and if they if they can not to give tribute to Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know. I think that it will be strange that if just because Tyre give tribute to Babylonia, and because we have a link between Tyre and Carthage, so Carthage have to do so. I don't know if it's but it's a question to see.
And we have another information about it, but it's not very certain. But I wanted to hear you other.
Yeah, it's a difficult question because I think even in the 6th century BC, Carthage was a powerful kingdom, and if they can not to give tribute to Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know. I think that it will be strange that if just because Tyre give tribute to Babylonia, and because we have a link between Tyre and Carthage, so Carthage have to do so. I don't know if it's because it's a question to.
They're looking outside. What is this? That Tyre's Nagu, Tyre's island. We know that Tyre has an island.
Yeah.
Another the second mentioned Syrian Empire.
They mentioned Cyprus?
Yeah, of course.
It's not so.
No, it's not really a first count. This is the debate, actually. Maybe in the future.
I think when they mention Tyre, they don't mention the city of Tyre. They mention the territory of Tyre.
Yeah, of course.
And when they mention the island of Tyre, it means the Tyre down that we know now, which is a peninsula, that was an island at the time. So we don't have to push it too much to go to Carthage.
Yes.
And the same as for Mount Ba'li Raqshi. When he says, after I crossed Mount Ba'li Raqshi and I reached Tyre, it doesn't mean that he reached Tyre, the city of Tyre, he reached the territory of Tyre.
I know.
And this is how we should think about it.
Mesopotamian inscription and the debate, actually, we know that when he says something, it's not just propaganda. I talk about Nagus in plural. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar II talk about Tyre and its territories, talk about small island, but we are thinking about Severus Nagu, and maybe I'm not just question because just wanted to know if Carthage maybe really special. It's open question.
Yes.
Well, maybe as the chair of the session, I can take opportunity of that position and ask a question. When the Assyrians refer to Phoenicians, they always refer to individual cities, or do they have, let's say, a common name for the population, like the Greeks use Phoenicians?
No, they have not a common name. They all refer to isolated cities, but sometimes Phoenicia is integrated in a more wide geographical area, like Khati, which is northern Lebanon, you can see. Sometimes with Amru, it's not very clear what it is. Maybe it's northern Lebanon, but more on the western side. And sometimes, many times, you have which maybe can be the more close of Phoenicia, it's the city of the seashore. Because in general, the city of the seashore are restricted to the city in the northern shore of the Mediterranean, and they never speak about the city of the seashore when they reach Phoenicia.